The original 4Ps of marketing were invented in the 1960s, before the internet, social media, smartphones, e-commerce, and, obviously, generative AI. While they still have their place, how should marketers rethink the framework to make it more relevant to today's challenges? What else should we be considering beyond product, place, price, and promotion? Marketing and sales are full of myths, misconceptions, and sometimes even outdated frameworks. Join us as we get out of the echo chamber and take the 4Ps from theory to practice with a healthy dose of modernity.
Hello, and welcome to the Rethink Marketing Podcast, where we strive to help our listeners hone their craft in bite-sized segments. I'm Paul Frodge, joined by Mr. Marketing, and for today's conversation, the fan of finding functionality in the familiar 4Ps, Colin Jeffries. Colin, how are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. I appreciate all the effort in these alliterations, this mini-series here. You've really been knocking it out of the park.
Absolutely. Really enjoyed the 4 series episode of the 4Ps. And, if we would have been born, or alive back then when these 4Ps were invented, it would have been nice to be able to forecast and foreshadow that those 4Ps actually need to be changing. And it's interesting, and I'm glad that we're rethinking this because, over time, and I haven't done a whole lot of research to see if other marketers out there are really rethinking like we are the 4Ps. And, I know it's been talked about adding a fifth P, but taking some of the 4Ps out or rethinking those a little bit differently. I'm glad that we're exploring that.
Absolutely. Likewise, when this is not meant to sound braggadocious at all, but when I was thinking through this framework with the marketing team that I have the privilege of leading, it was really about we're not having conversations about pricing. We're not having conversations about place. We're having, because again, it's a service-based business, it's healthcare, et cetera. So when I'm thinking about how we're actually having conversations, it's around people, it's around platforms, it's around process. It is definitely around product, meaning touch points. So again, I think this is really relevant to today's marketplace and to today's marketers. And I'm excited that hopefully we can be thought leaders in that regard.
Yeah, I hope so. Hopefully everybody's enjoying this 4 series episode.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, what are we rethinking today? The last of the 4Ps?
Yeah, Colin, today we're rethinking platform and really how we're encountering customers, how customers are coming to us as businesses, and how they're finding our product or service, and the opportunity to really showcase the ever evolving opportunities in marketing, and to look at how we're buying products, to look at how we are hiring a service-based business, to find out in healthcare how we're choosing a hospital of choice. Really thinking about that, and adding in this fourth P that I don't think many have considered.
Absolutely. And just for clarity, when Paul and I are talking about the word platform, we're actually meaning any sort of technology or location where you can encounter a potential customer and even the community at large. So, this is basically the next evolution of place, where we recognize that we're typically not meeting new customers in an open marketplace. We're typically meeting them from referrals, from word of mouth, from advertising, et cetera. So when we're thinking about platform, it goes beyond just place and should include systems where we're active or we're inactive. So think about different types of social media, different review platforms, et cetera. There's so much that goes into platform. So I guess, Paul, to kick it off, what should an organization consider when they're thinking about in which platforms they should be active?
Yeah, so some of the things I think about are, your target audience, and those that are listening are very well educated, I know, but thinking about that demographic of who you're trying to reach, the digital opportunities continue to evolve and change, so it goes beyond just that customer persona. It really goes a little bit deeper into opportunities to find out who is actually in the market right now, this minute, to go and layer on additional opportunities to find out who may be in the market in the future, to find out who has had good experience, and maybe we call it conquesting, in looking at the opportunity to say, okay, somebody's not happy at a competitor of ours, and the opportunity to steal that customer in that moment right now in every way to get them here for their next visit or for their next purchase.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll shift it a little bit and we can talk about Amazon as a bit of a case in point here when we're talking about platform selection. Many organizations choose not to be present on Amazon. I think Nike is probably the most famous, but there's also Robert Kiyosaki's brand, Rich Dad. They've chosen to be inactive on Amazon. And there are a lot of reasons that go into that, including lack of quality control, meaning tons of knockoffs, inability to own your own pricing, so lack of margin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when many organizations are thinking through, do we accept lower margins? Do we accept increased competition? Or do we force would be customers to go to our website, to go to our social media, to be on our platforms? That is really an intense and in-depth decision that typically is not made by marketing alone. And so marketing having a seat at the table should be really beneficial to decide what platforms that we're actually going to go compete on and going to be present on.
Yeah, I remember we talk about place. I remember we talk about this all the time, but when I was in radio and radio advertising, and the place was the car dealer promotion where there was free pizza and the opportunity to get people to come to that location and drive a lot of traffic to see cars. And really, all that people really wanted was pizza or something free, right? So you do get that a little bit of that exposure for the dealership that somebody may have driven by 100 times, or the opportunity to consider maybe they were driving a Ford and maybe they would consider Chevy. Usually that didn't work out, Ford and Chevy, right? But maybe a bad analogy, but the opportunity to really explore something else that they may have not have considered in the past.
You bring up a good point, Paul, which is sometimes platform is key for just making those initial introductions, recognizing, as Alan Dibb would say, only about 3% of the people that you engage with are ready to buy now. So, what do you do about the other 97%? If we're bringing people in and building that familiarity and building trust, that we can have what I would consider are sort of trust building platforms. And then we can have different types of platforms that we're engaging with all the way down the sales funnel. And then even after the sales funnel, when we're thinking about systems like or platforms like Net Promoter Score and those sorts of things, talking about technology and then talking too about product and all of the different touch points. And then I guess we can throw people in there too, making sure that the people are representing the brand well and whatnot to hit all of the new 4Ps. But when we're talking about platforms specifically, where can we be best in class? I think is a question that we have to answer. Yes, we have platforms where we're meeting people and we're building trust and those sorts of things. And then where do we really own the market? Where are we the leader? Because it's probably not that we're going to be the leader in every single platform every single time. So instead of thinking about all of our platforms as how can we be the best at them, let's think about how can we maybe be viable on X, formerly known as Twitter. How can we be viable on Facebook? How can we be viable on LinkedIn? But how can we be the market leader in content creation on YouTube or on TikTok or what have you for our space? Let's pick these different platforms and then optimize the heck out of one of them and really, really be the market leader there.
Sometimes, Colin, I think that the platform is an opportunity where it's something that you didn't think it would be a platform. And I'm going to give you an example. We're building a website for a Corvette parts company, and there's forums out there. I'm not a big car guy myself, but there's forums out there that I've learned from the owner of this business where they're all talking about the diagrams for this Corvette parts company. And everybody uses those diagrams. And the owner of the business doesn't look at that as stealing something from him. He uses it as a way for people to talk about him and his website and get traffic back to them. So sometimes platforms can be not something that's intentional, but more of an opportunity where if you are a market leader in something and you are best in class at something, you talk about that word of mouth. That's what I think of when I think about these forums that I'm talking about, is that that warm referral over to his business because he is best in class at what he does.
That's a great point, Paul. Even recognizing there are platforms out there that we may not be aware of. And then when they do land on our radar, so to speak, how do we move forward in an intentional way? So I love that you brought that up. I'll share something from my own experience, which is there is a market leader that allows patients to do SMS text messages with a person who has certain credentials. So they're able to help them with particular things, right? I don't want to get into the nuances and specifics, but people are able to, customers, patients are able to have SMS conversations with this qualified person that can help them. That's awesome. The platforms they have chosen are ubiquitous, easy, simple. Anyone that has a phone, it doesn't even have to be a smartphone. Anyone that has a phone that texts can engage with these people and get the services that they need. The flip side of that is we probably have all, anybody that's a healthcare consumer, has had the experience of going to a provider and having the provider say, oh, all you have to do is download this app. I'm going to text you an encryption code. You're going to have to do two-factor authentication. You're going to have to set up and change your password. You're going to have to go in. You're going to have to click on settings. You're going to have to select and opt into allowing push notifications. Then you're going to have to allow, right? And we go through this 25-step process just to say request our medical records, right? And in the difference between universal accessibility based on platform selection, i.e. SMS, versus downloading an app and having to do two-factor authentication and having to jump through all these hoops just to get your own data anyway, those two things are massive competitive differentiators while the organizations themselves are doing basically the same exact service, employing commoditized staff, and the results are probably about the same when you think about medical outcomes and those sorts of things, but it's the platform that's making a huge difference. So, Paul, I know we've talked about the new 4 Ps of marketing: people, product, platform, and process. The new 4 Ps, I would say, should be a framework where we can look at each of them and how we're doing. Are we haphazard and hiring anybody that is applying, or are we being super deliberate and intentional about hiring our type of person? Same thing with platform. Are we just using technology that exists and we're playing in every market where we think we should be, or on every platform where competitors are? Or are we being really deliberate in saying we can be best in class here and we can really own the market? Or we're saying we can leverage this platform as a differentiator. So lots of food for thought here as we're talking about the new 4 Ps of marketing. I've really enjoyed this conversation, the sort of 4 episode series that we've had. Paul, anything else you would say about the new 4 Ps of marketing before we wrap up this final episode?
No, I think this is great. I think that there is opportunities, to be forward thinking though, because there are probably more Ps, if you will, that can be added as time goes on. And the 4 Ps that were created back in the 1960s is something that educators continue to hone in on. I'm not saying that those 4 Ps aren't legitimate for some businesses, but there are opportunities as we continue to evolve, the new technology that exists, the new opportunities to engage with customers, with employees, with opportunities for that. Maybe we stop thinking about having everything start with a P in the future. I know that's for ease and the opportunity to remember things, but think about that as we continue to move forward in looking at the 4 Ps of marketing as they continue to evolve.
Well said, Paul. Well said. This has been a really enjoyable series of conversations. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us on the Rethink Marketing Podcast. Hey, if you missed the other 3 episodes of the prior 4 Ps, I would encourage you to go back and listen to those. This episode will make a little bit more sense in the context of the other 3. Be sure to tune in next week where we interview Shema Hyder of Zen Media. And until then, keep rethinking those common assumptions. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If people want to connect with us, where should they go, Paul?
RethinkMarketingPodcast.com, Colin. What can listeners do to help us in return for this sage marketing wisdom and our pithy humor?
They can help us by leaving a review on their favorite platform or sharing this episode with a fellow marketer to help them cut through the clutter.
Well, until next time, keep rethinking those common assumptions.